Hi, my name is Calvin Egg from Niverville, Manitoba, and honestly, I'm a chicken salesman. As part of my job, I do a fair bit of driving. In fact, I put over 460,000 kilometers on my 1992 Saturn.
Back in 1990, a new car company named Saturn sold their first small sedans and coupes, meant to compete and beat the Japanese imports. Although starting as an employee-owned company founded by General Motors leadership, its products competed with GM cars, leading to a merger back with GM and ultimately dying 20 years after it was founded. This is the story of the Saturn Corporation. This is my old car.
As far as I'm concerned, in a perfect world, everybody would eat 2 eggs a day and drive a Saturn.
Thanks for the many suggestions for reviewing the Saturn Car Company. And thanks again for all the suggestions and great stories about your old cars, as it has helped my channel grow well past 1 million views. Before Saturn was a car company, it was a code name for a new small car project headed by Alex C. Mayer, then Vice President of GM's Advanced Engineering Staff. The first prototypes were released to the public in November of 1983, and at that time they were expected to be badged as a Chevrolet, Buick, or some other GM brand. But by 1985, Saturn instead became incorporated as its own company. Although the future logo would resemble Saturn the planet, it was actually named after the Saturn rockets that carried Americans to the moon. The thinking was that, just like the Saturn rockets helped America overtake Russia in the space race, the Saturn cars could overtake the Japanese car makers. It was an extremely lofty goal, since Saturn would not rely on existing factories, parts, or dealerships from within GM, but instead be entirely self-sufficient. The new cars would be engineered from the ground up, with then state-of-the-art plastic body panel construction, built in their own dedicated factory, and have their own separate dealer network. Even the labor agreement with the UAW was unique, with profit sharing, workers' rights, and job descriptions differing from existing agreements with GM. It was widely considered the largest gamble from any American automaker in decades. Not everyone at GM was thrilled with the whole idea, since they foresaw Saturn cars taking away sales from the established GM brands, not to mention draining billions of dollars from their budgets. The one and only Saturn plant began construction in 1986 in Spring Hill, Tennessee, at a cost of $1.9 billion. Completed in 1988, with 3,000 workers hired, the factory itself was often the focal point in Saturn advertising, so much so that in 1994, Saturn organized their first homecoming event, attracting 44,000 Saturn car owners to travel to Spring Hill to let them see where their car was built. To help Saturn dealerships stand out from the competition, they proposed a radical idea: no haggle pricing.
Look at this, friends. Now look at that. Oh, look at that.
The price tag on the car is what the customer paid, so technically they weren't dealerships, as no deal making was made. Instead, they were, in effect, retail stores that just happened to sell cars.
Everybody, this is Julie, and this is her first new car.
But the no-haggle sales approach wasn't the only thing Saturn had unique to them. Instead of typical steel body panels, most of the outside panels were made of a flexible thermoplastic. Only the roof and hood were steel. This feature was heavily marketed, showing all sorts of objects hitting the doors with no damage. The first Saturn models, known as the S Series, went on sale in 1990, with the first model built on July 30 of that year, the same day that GM's then CEO, Roger Smith, retired. These first models were simply called SL, short for sedan level, followed by SC, or Sport Coupe models. Both the sedans and coupes shared a 1.9-liter four-cylinder that was designed entirely in-house for Saturn, although buyers could choose from either single or double overhead cam models. The base model SL and slightly better SL1 had the single overhead cam, and the SL2 models had the double overhead cam engine. The SL2 also had more standard features such as power windows and locks, and color-matched bumpers and door handles, instead of the gray plastic that almost literally screamed base model. The base model SL was so stripped down that it only offered a manual transmission, no power steering, and in fact no power anything, cheaper cloth seats, and no passenger side mirror, the latter much like what the cheapest Chevettes once had. Hard to believe that that level of cheap lasted into the 90s. The coupes initially were only called SC, since they only had the double overhead cam engine. This engine had shorter gear ratios to emphasize performance over fuel efficiency, although despite the pop-up headlamps, they typically were not confused with real sports cars. By 1993, the single overhead cam engine became available for the coupes, now called the SC1. Opting for that engine meant you also lost the pop-up headlamps that remained with the SC2. Also in 1993 saw the introduction of the first Saturn wagon models. called the SW1 and SW2. To keep costs down, the wagons were identical to the sedans from the rear doors forward, with just the roof and body behind the C-pillar modified. In 1996, Saturn also started distributing the GM EV1, General Motors' first fully electric vehicle, and the only GM car ever to be badged as GM. Saturn only distributed the EV1 until 1999, after which production ended. There's a lot more history of the EV1 that can be told here, so it may be in a future My Old Car episode. Despite the obvious cost cutting, the S-Series was Saturn's longest running model line, and the only one to have 3 generations. With over 2 million Saturns sold by 1995, the first-gen sedans and wagons lasted until 1996, and the first-gen coupe until 1997. All 3 body styles in the second-gen S-Series received a major redesign on the exterior, still with gray bumpers and door handles on the base models, with the interior and mechanicals staying mostly unchanged.
So stop by your local retailer. Give them a hug.
The SC models had bigger changes, growing in length to share the same wheelbase with the SL and SW models. The SC2 also lost its pop-up headlamps, now having the same front end as the SC1. Starting in 1999, all SCs had a third suicide-style door added to the driver's side, which could only be opened and closed when the driver's door was open. 1999 is also the year that the 2 millionth Saturn was built, along with the second and final homecoming event at the Spring Hill manufacturing plant. Third-generation S-Series cars started in 2000, with a less radical change in look compared to Gen 2. But by then, more focus was being put towards the next Saturn model, the L-Series. The L-Series marked the beginning of the end of the original Saturn concept as a standalone company, not sharing anything with its GM parent. Although the L-Series definitely had a family resemblance to the S-Series, it was the first Saturn to share a platform with other GM cars. Known then as the GM 2900, this platform was primarily used for GM's Opel and Vauxhall brands in Europe.
Manchmal muss man einfach in den Ring steigen.
But also for the Saab 9.3 and 9.5, since by then GM had taken over Saab. Its 4- and 6-cylinder engine offerings were also not unique to Saturn, with variations of the same engines in several other GM models. The L-Series was also the first Saturn not to be built in Spring Hill, but instead in an existing GM plant in Wilmington, Delaware, that had been building several other Chevrolet and Pontiac models since 1947. The sedans were initially referred to as LS, LS1, and LS2. But a year later, their names had to change to L100, L200, and L300, as Lincoln called them out for using the same LS name as their compact luxury sedan. The L-Series sold poorly compared to the S-Series, had more quality and complaint issues, and a recall of over 300,000 cars due to brake failures by its last model year in 2005. 2002 marked the end of the S-Series, with the Spring Hill plant retooled to build Saturn's first SUV and the first Saturn to have an actual name, the View. Like the S-Series, the View had plastic door panels, but unlike the S-Series, its platform was shared with the first generation Chevy Equinox, and the one and only generation of the Equinox's rebadged sibling, the Pontiac Torrent. Spring Hill was also retooled in 2002 to begin rolling out the S-Series replacement, the Saturn Ion. Yet again, the Ion was not unique to Saturn, as underneath it shared a platform with the Chevy Cobalt and Chevy's rebadged Pontiac sibling, the G5. Although the Ion was offered in sedan and coupe body styles, both of them had 4 doors. The coupe had rear suicide doors similar to the S-Series coupe, but now on both the driver and passenger side, hence its name, the Quad Coupe. The Ion's trim levels went from the base model that had pretty much manual everything, to the Redline model that started in 2004 and shared the same engine and powertrain as the supercharged Chevy Cobalt SS. To help promote the Redline in 2003, GM's Performance Division modified an Ion Redline's 2-liter turbo to reach 212 miles per hour at the Bonneville Salt Flats. Yet despite that recognition, most Ions sold were the more basic coupes and sedans, and in general were not as well received as the first S-Series models were 15 years earlier.
That's a Saturn? Shit.
By 2004, the Redline trim was also offered on the View SUV, and a more powerful V6 engine that was actually built by Honda, further breaking from the original Saturn playbook.
That's a f***ing Saturn?
The old Saturn playbook was effectively thrown away by 2004, starting with Spring Hill's unique UAW labor contract being dissolved, and Saturn operations becoming more integrated with parent GM. This was followed by the release of the Saturn Relay minivan, one of 4 GM minivans new for 2004, with squared-off front ends to make them look more like SUVs.
Saturn my ass.
Yeah, that didn't work. as all those minivans died by 2007. The Relay has the distinction of being the first Saturn model without plastic body panels. 2007 saw the introduction of several new Saturn models that were all shared with other GM cars. With the Wilmington plant no longer building the L Series, it was retooled to build the Saturn Sky Roadster.
Saturn? No fucking way.
Along with its Kappa platform partners, the Pontiac Solstice and Opel GT, the latter only being sold in Europe. The L Series replacement, the Aura sedan, was released that same year, sharing the same platform as the Chevy Malibu, Pontiac G6, and Saab 9-3. The Aura is widely considered one of the best cars that had Saturn's name on it, having been named North American Car of the Year in 2007. Also in 2007 was the Saturn Outlook, a 3-row SUV that used the same Lambda platform as the Chevy Traverse, GMC Acadia, and Buick Enclave. All three of those cars are still in production as of 2021. In 2007, the first-gen Saturn Vue entered its run, being replaced by an entirely different car with the same name. The second-gen Vue was a rebadged Opel Antara, manufactured in Mexico, alongside the Chevy Captiva Sport, not to be confused with the Chevy Captiva, which was an entirely different model, made in Korea and never sold in the US. Americans would later see the Captiva Sport show up on their roads in 2012, but they couldn't buy one, as they were only sold to rental fleets. So if you own a Captiva Sport today, you're probably not the original owner. 2007 will also see the end of the Saturn Ion, and the end of the Saturn manufacturing in Spring Hill. The Ion was replaced by the Saturn Astra in 2008, a rebadged third-generation Opel Astra built in Belgium. The Saturn Astra sold poorly, ending only a year later, due to a glut of unsold Ions, along with the eventual public knowledge that Saturn's days were numbered. This influx of new models, along with Saturn no longer being a separate company and instead being fully integrated into GM, could have started a new chapter for Saturn. Or not, since all the new models were just rebadged versions of other GM products, with few differences to make Saturn stand out. But it didn't have much chance to prove itself either way, thanks to the 2008 recession and GM's bankruptcy. GM announced on December 2, 2008 that Saturn, along with Pontiac, Hummer, and Saab, would either be sold, consolidated, or closed within the next 2 years. In the case of Saturn, the plan was a sale to Penske Automotive Group, with GM continuing to build the Aura, Vue, and Outlook for the next 2 years. However, the deal fell through on September 30, 2009, as Penske could not find a partner to build those models following those 2 years, leading to GM announcing Saturn would officially end in 2010. The Saturn Car Company's legacy may still live on for those who bought into the original hype of Saturn being, as their tagline once said, a different kind of car company.
Weirdos!
Saturn was far from a failure in terms of sales, especially in its first decade. Sadly, its second decade was mostly just another GM brand with a different face on cars GM already had. Even without the bankruptcy, it's unlikely Saturn would still be around today, as GM had to eventually slim down anyway. If any former Saturn owner still misses their car today, I'll bet they attended one of those homecomings in Spring Hill. Thanks for watching. If you liked this video, click the like button and subscribe to my channel. If you once owned a car from the 80s to mid-2000s that you rarely see today and would like it featured in a future episode, leave a reply in the comments or contact me at the email shown here. See you next time.
That's a Saturn?
Yeah.